So thank you everyone for being here this evening. I know it's another beautiful day, not as hot as it has been lately, but thanks for sharing your time and to listen to me talking about toilet training. My name is Lynn Legg. I'm a physical therapist by training. I've worked for a lot of years in private clinic settings as well as in the schools, and I work for Early On as well. I've done a lot of different trainings, and I've worked with Melanie numerous times at the library over the years. And you guys have a great library system in Farmington with a lot of things that you offer for families and young children. It's really nice to see. So tonight we're going to talk about toilet training and the basics of toilet training. So we're going to talk about some information like getting ready to start. And I know there were some questions that were posted out to the group. So I knew a little bit more about some of you coming into the meeting tonight because I always like to know what the needs are of the people. And it's hard to do when you're doing a Zoom meeting like this with a lot of people. So I have worked with children that have special needs my entire career. At one time, I was working in a classroom at an elementary school that worked preschool through elementary, and my room was the adapted bathroom for the entire program that was in that school building. So it became on my shoulders to be the one that was in charge of toilet training for the kids. So I took a lot of classes about toilet training kids that had different varying needs. And that's how I kind of started my besides being a parent of a child that had to be toilet trained too. That started my journey on toilet training with kids that have varying needs. And then over the course of the years since then, I've worked lots and lots of families with very young children and have offered guidance and learned from some of them as well, either whether it was in workshops that I've done or parents that I've directly dealt with individually that are trying to guide along the way. So I'm going to share with some of those things that I've learned, some basic information about research, and that's out there available to you, and some starting points for you to get going. So let me start the first slide. Here we go. I'm going to have to do it over here. Oh, can I do it? Uh-oh, I'm having trouble with there it is. Okay. So first thing I want to share with you, because I do work for Early On Oakland as well, that's how I'm presenting with you tonight. It'll be embedded in the presentation that you received from Melanie, but if you have any questions at all about your child's development, free to you through Help Me Grow Oakland, if you scan this QR code, you can do an ages and stages questionnaire, and that's available to anyone. It's free, and it can look at your child's development overall. And if you have any concerns at all, you can then speak to somebody more about that as well. But I added this slide to the presentation, which I've never done before, but just so that you have some information that you can access if you would like to. The other thing you can find through Oakland County is the Great Start Collaborative. Offers a lot of things for families and children, including the things that we do for birth to 3. And they have a calendar that you can access. I added the link to here, so you can use that through the PowerPoint when you receive it. But you can look at the calendar, and it gives you the events per month for like upcoming months. There are things that are available. There are some classes that are parent and child together. Some are parent only, like this one. So you can look at that and see what's available. I know Great Start has some play groups over the summer as well, which I think are on that calendar. So if you're interested in some free play groups, those are also available through that calendar. So please take a look and see what might be interesting to you. The other thing that is available, if you have a child under the age of 3 and you have any concerns about their development, you can initiate a referral through this QR code, or you can call Early On, or you can call Oakland County as well, the ISD, because they have a referral process. And if you have any concerns at all, that's what you can do as well to get some more information. An evaluation would be done based on that process too. So just added this information in so in case you had questions about your child. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about tonight. I'm going to give you a little background of research, a little background of some variety of methods that are out there, and you may have read some books already or looked at some things online. I'm going to talk about readiness skills because that's kind of the starting point, looking at when you're going to toilet train your child. I've created 10 steps of toilet training based on what I've gathered from all the sources that I've looked at over the years. I have some hints that I have learned, things that I've created myself, some that I've learned from others that kind of make life easier. And then when you're going to contact the doctor in case things are not going as you expect. And then we'll finish it up with some questions at the very end when we finish the presentation. So let's get started. So the first thing, I love this quote from the Mayo Clinic, is that potty training success hinges on not just the age of a child, but the physical, developmental, and behavioral milestones the child is going through. Because toilet training is the milestone, just like sitting up, walking, feeding themselves, all those other milestones that we see our children do. So I know that it's a good reference point for me to know that success is based on all of those milestones coming together for your child. It's not just a thing, it's something that's very important for us and our kids. So based on some research that I was able to find, they didn't have a lot about methods, but more information about problematic things. But we know that there was one study that started documenting things way back 1890, so over a century and a half ago. And looking at that time frame, kids were trained much earlier than they are now, on the whole. Now, there are some kids that are trained young as well now, but on average, kids started training before they either were 1 year old, and they were finished by the time they were 2. But I know from my own personal experience doing genealogy research, families were much larger at that time. Amenities were not there. We didn't have paper diapers. Everything was cloth diapers. Some people didn't even have washing machines. So it was a necessity to be trained soon and early because you had another baby coming up potentially. That's one thing that happened early on when they started documenting this information. Now we know that training begins anywhere from around 18 months to around 3 years old for some kids. So when you think of the comparison to what it was like back then, that's a huge difference that we start at that age, not finish at that age. We know that disposable diapers have had a huge impact on toilet training for lots of reasons that we'll go over later. We also know there are some cultural attitudes that also make it difficult for us when we're trying to toilet train our kids. I know that sometimes you get pressure from a parent or grandparent or an aunt, someone in the family who says, well, why aren't you doing it now? Because that you were trained by the time you were 15 months old. So there's pressures that are put on us to get our children trained early that sometimes are based on our family structures or just who we're around. I also know that the pressure to be trained before you go to preschool, if you have preschool starting up in the fall, that's a huge pressure on us as parents to make sure our children are toilet trained before they can go to preschool. So that's another piece of pressure that puts on us as parents to get this job done soon. Problem is, kids have a timetable that they follow on their own. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So a little bit about some different methods that are out there. There are a lot of methods. I've read a lot of different books. I'm sure you've read some that I have not read. I've read a lot of research studies as well. But two of the big ones that are referenced by most organizations that talk about pediatrics with kids. One is Dr. T. Barry Brazelton, who was a forefront of pediatric research and methods. And he wrote a book way back in 1962 about a method that really was child-oriented. And his is one of the most accepted methods that's out there by pediatricians and the background information for that training. Back in the 70s, two psychologists, Asrin and Fox, designed a structural approach that was saying that they could toilet train a child in less than a day. I know I've seen some other ones that say doing it in 3-day method, a weekend method. There's different versions of the same kind of idea, which based on what your child is like and what your dynamic is like, that might work for some kids. It would never have worked for my son because he was a bit of a challenge when he was toilet training. But you might find that method might work for you. And I've had some people that I've worked with who actually had great success doing that method. I also had somebody say to me at a training I did yesterday that their first 2 children were easy to train, but the one they're trying to train now is totally different than the other 2. So if you have other kids in the home, it might be a whole different process for this child than it was with other kids that you've already trained, because every child is unique and different and our relationships are all different. So just keep that in mind. We know that readiness is an important factor. And so the research kind of shows that the average age of readiness is anywhere between 22 months to 30 months to get ready to start toilet training. One study showed that to be trained, boys were generally trained a little bit later than girls by just about 2 months. So right around 3 to 38 months is when kids are trained generally. Sometimes it's later for some kids, sometimes it's sooner. And then we also know physiologically that the control of the sphincters that control the bowel and bladder don't really have control cognitive control of a child until about 18 months of age. So for us to try and train a child who's younger than that, they may be able to do it, but it may be a process of looking at rhythms as opposed to having actual sphincter control, because it doesn't start until about 18 months of age. Then how long does it usually take? It's funny because the librarian that I was with yesterday said her daughter, who's 2.5, she started training, and it's been about 6 months, and she's not quite at the end. She's still having accents, but she said about 6 months. So the average is about 3 to 6 months on average for most kids. If your child has any delays or any other special needs, sometimes it takes longer to get that process finished. And for some kids, you may not start until they are developmentally ready. I have a former coworker who had a young man that she worked with who happened to have Down syndrome. And he was a little one that when he got older and older, he still was not trained. And his mom was resigned to the fact that he probably was never going to be trained. He finally was at the age of 14. And mom was surprised. She didn't expect it to happen. But he was developmentally at the phase where he would have been to start training if he were not having delays that he had. So sometimes that has a factor that comes into play. So just keep that in mind with your child. If there's any sensory issues, sometimes that makes the process longer. So just we're going to have to deal with those things as they happen with your child. We're going to talk tonight more about getting started with training, not what happens at the end, but we also know by research that nighttime training occurs somewhere between 5 and 7 years of age. So kids are going to still have accents at night potentially until they get a little bit older. I ironically had one little boy that I worked with who kind of trained himself, and he actually trained nighttime training at the same time as doing daytime training because he had the strong interest in doing it. And it was quite a surprise knowing his needs that he had, but also the fact that he did it kind of with mom's support rather than guidance, because he kind of ran the whole show. It was really amazing to see. So it can be done with some kids too. We know that accents are going to happen at night. 1 in 4 kids by the age of 5 are still having an accent at night. We also know that assistance for wiping might be needed even until age 5 or sometimes even older than that, because kids sometimes don't quite know how to do the process well. And I just happened to see, I'll share it now, I just happened to see something through Facebook, and I thought, why did I not think of this myself? I do so many things in my everyday activities with children, working with clothespins, the pinch kind. And this woman used pinch clips on the bottom of their pants in the back for the child to pull off to get the idea of reaching behind to reach where their bottom is so they can do wiping. And then practiced using 2 oranges in a bowl with a smear of peanut butter. So they practiced wiping away the peanut butter. So they got the idea of how far to make it clean. Brilliant. I wish I had thought about that and practiced it years ago with little ones. But that's a way to give them a nice visual. They know what they're doing and getting the process down pat before they actually have to do it. So it's something you can practice. I thought that was just brilliant. So we know that, though, that some assistance for wiping is going to be needed up until older ages. We also know that when kids go into public bathrooms or somewhere unfamiliar, the situation is very different. Home bathrooms, you have a tank. Public bathrooms typically don't have a tank on them. And so the way you sit on a toilet at a public bathroom is very different. Sometimes they're kind of noisy. Sometimes they flush much louder than they do at home. Or sometimes they just feel kind of dirty compared to what you're used to at home. So some kids may need more assistance in those environments until even older. So just be aware of that it's not going to be a one and done kind of situation. It's a process for kids, because it really is a developmental process. So if you're not familiar with Emily Oster, she does a lot of data analysis from a business point of view. And so she actually looked at, and she has some different information out there, even though she's not a child development expert, but information that she analyzes data. And she looked at a bunch of trends in terms of toilet training. I found this chart interesting because it shows a comparison of when you start training and how long it takes, or when they finally complete the task. And if you look at them, they all have a similar window of that about 3 to 6 months, like we were talking about, except for that last window starting over the age of 3. But the process, there's subtle differences between. There's not one right age, but this is just kind of a reference point for you to know that you can see that sometimes it may take a little longer. 2-year-old behavior sometimes kick in, and kids are a little bit more resistant to things, and that might be a factor in some of the time frames with here. And sometimes kids start off being interested in what's going on, but then they realize the work of it, so they stop participating. You may have to come back to it. That also may factor into that time frame interval. But I thought this was an interesting dynamic to look at. So the thing that we talk about that's really important, if you look at any of the major pediatric hospital websites, if you look at many of the books that are out there, they talk about readiness. And they really kind of talk about a twofold readiness, physical readiness as well as emotional readiness, because we know that there are a lot of things that go along with our little ones developing under the age of 3. So I'm going to go over those now. And I know that it's recommended that almost all, if not all of these are in place before you train your child, because that's going to give you the greatest success. So sometimes age factors into what you're going to see here in this list. So from an emotional point of view side, the first one is that they have a desire to please you, but at the same time, a desire for independence, which kind of sounds to me like that double-edged sword that you get with a 2-year-old, which is what you're going to be dealing with toilet training a child that's in that age range. But the fact that they want to please you and want to be independent is what you want for the outcome. And that's a really good thing. And how you process and get there is what we're going to deal with in the ways that you speak to your child and set up the situation. Being able to understand and follow a simple one-step direction. Let's go to the bathroom. Pull down your pants, wash your hands. So you can give them those single steps one at a time, and they can follow those with you and understand what's going to happen. Then their ability to give you a simple statement or a question, like they might be able to tell you, I need to go potty, I need a pee-pee. Or they might even say, I already went poo-poo, or whatever the word they use, that they can communicate that to you. Now, if you have a child who has communication delays, you don't need to wait until the communication is better. You can use other modes of communication if that's easiest, and I'll show you some examples of some of those. Some kids use sign language, some use devices, some have low-tech like communication boards, which I'll show you a picture of in just a moment. But so that's not a deterrent to trying if that's the only reason that you're not able to try, but it's a thing to be able to understand and be able to communicate with you. If they show an interest in what happens in the bathroom by trying to follow you to the bathroom, if you happen to have a potty chair set up already, or if they follow everyone going into the bathroom, that's a good sign because it tells you that they're interested, they're curious about what might be happening in that room. And you can talk with them about what's happening and what you're doing if you're comfortable doing that as a process of getting them ready for toilet training. So that's a good sign that they're showing some interest in being ready. And then the last one on this list is similar on the other list as well, but that there's a behavior that you notice that shows an awareness of something happening, whether it's their bladder is full or that they have the pressure that they feel for a bowel movement. And you know that something's going to be happening because you can tell by their behavior. So that is the last one of the emotional readiness. Now on to the physical side. The first one, being able to get to that bathroom, get on and off whatever you have set up, whether it's a potty chair or the toilet, regular sized toilet with a reducer or step stool or whatever you might have. So being able to get up and down onto those things, pulling their pants up and down, washing and drying their hands, because that's all part of the toilet training process. If you have a child that has physical disabilities, again, it's not a deterrent to doing toilet training if they're ready otherwise. You will just need to assist them a different way than you might with a child that doesn't have those same physical needs. So it's not a deterrent completely, but I've had some kids who were wheelchair bound that had to be totally sat down on a potty by an adult, and they were still toilet trained. So it's something that you can accommodate for if you need to do that. The next one is having that bowel and bladder control. And again, I said before, it comes around 18 months. So having that ability to control the sphincters, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can say signs of that, but that's another one that's a physical skill. If you have a child that has a predictable time frame for having bowel movements, I know over the years I've had some kids that every time I saw them at 9 o'clock in the morning, they had a BM. So that would be a great sign to know that it's time to sit them on the potty, because if they have a BM every morning at 9 o'clock, you know that's their regular schedule. However, you also have some kids who don't have a regular schedule, so that would not be your starting point. But that predictability is sometimes a sign that their body rhythms are getting into play. Although I've had some kids who have a BM 3 times a day. So again, if you know what those time frames are, that's what you're going to use. Kind of a very important physical one is not having a bowel movement while sleeping, whether it's at nap time or especially at nighttime. If kids go into such a deep sleep that they have a bowel movement pass through while they're asleep, that kind of tells you that they are not listening to their body cues yet. They're not being aware of those things happening yet. So that's kind of one of the big signs that maybe they're not ready if you're seeing those bowel movements happen when they're sleeping. But if they happen to wake up dry or have periods of dryness during the day of at least 2 hours, especially like after a nap. Those are great signs that they're able to control how much liquid is staying in their bladder and not letting it release when they're sleeping. And they may, when they wake up, it might be right away. You don't know. But that idea that they have about a window of 2 hours of their day that has some dry periods, that's a really good sign that the changes are happening in their control of their bladder. And then the last one is very similar to the first list, that there's awareness of passing that urine or stool. And stool is easier to see. Most kids will turn red. They might grunt. I'll be seeing some of my families and they say, oh, they're going to go poop because they saw the signs coming. So you know your child best. You're going to watch for the signs that you know or what they do. Some kids will go hide in a certain corner. They'll go behind a chair. They might even say, don't look at me. I've had some that have said that to me because communication skills are really good. But just having that awareness that you can see the signs of something happening that they're trying to do, that's a good sign that something's starting because they know what's going on too. So you're going to actually assign the words to that so they have an understanding of what's happening when you communicate with them. So here's an example of one version of a visual schedule. And it could be used actually to communicate saying that you need to go potty. And this one, it has interesting pictures for the urine and for the BM, but this is one version that I've seen. There's other versions. You may have, if you have a child that has communication systems, they have other types of graphics that they use. I've even had some that have actual pictures of your child. So showing the process is kind of a sequence one. So these things are available to you. And if your child does have any special needs, people that you're working with may be able to assist you in making some of these if you need those for your child too. So, but this is what would be an accommodation for someone who can't communicate that as easily for you. So it's a nice thing to have there. So a couple of things I want you to think about. When you're thinking about getting ready to toilet train, number one, paper diapers have become so good that I know when my son, he's a dad of 3, so he's much older. And when his diapers, when he was a baby, I started off with cloth diapers and I switched over to the paper diapers at the time. And they were not at all like they are now. They were very thin. He leaked all the time. So they were not as good at catching urine and keeping BMs in place. The ones now, kids don't even feel wet because they get so thick and heavy when they have a big urine, and it kind of dangles on you can see it when we're walking across the room. You see a dangly diaper. You know they've gone because you can see that. But that means they don't feel the wetness as much as they could if they had on cloth clothing. But does your child really know what wetness feels like? So some kids need to be taught what that means. So you might have to actually go through a process if they don't understand what wetness feels like. Does your child notice when they have a yucky diaper? Is it wet or do they have a poop in there? Some kids don't even bother having doesn't bother them at all to have a messy diaper. And those are kind of a sign that maybe they're not quite ready yet, even though they might show some other signs. And especially some of the older kids who might do that, that's a little bit of a concern. So you know your child best. You know, do they show you a sign that they like or don't like the feeling of that wetness, or does the messy diaper bother them at all? You're going to keep that in mind when you're looking at, are they ready? And then the other one is how or can your child communicate to you any of these things? Can they say that the diaper is messy? Can they tell you that they've had a poop, or whatever word you choose to use for that? So working on those communication skills is another prerequisite or process piece of getting to toilet training. So now let's talk about timing, because timing is also something that we have to be kind of aware of, because it's based on your child's signs, but also life circumstances. So the first one, what we know is a child's life needs to be pretty peaceful and stable and predictable when we're going to do something so critical, and that's going to be work for all of us and the children, to do toilet training. So having that predictability is pretty important. So there are some recommendations in terms of when you should avoid starting toilet training. It doesn't mean that if you've already tried, you don't continue through, but here's a couple of things that are recommended. One is that don't start fresh if you're going to be traveling on a long trip or somewhere that you can't, not conducive to toilet training. I had a former family that had twins. They were going to be on a long trip back home into Germany where they were from, and the mom wanted to start training before they left, which she did. And when she got there, she was planning to see it through, but what she realized when she came back, she shared with me that it was just too different for the children. The situation was different. The people weren't familiar. Everything was so foreign to them that she abandoned it while she was there. When she came back home and they adjusted to being back home, then she started up again and things went fine. But in the process of that trip, it was really stressful for her and the kids both. So it was not a great idea to do it when you're traveling. If you have a new baby coming, and I'm not sure if any of you are having another baby soon, if you're starting training before baby comes, that's fine. I would suggest not giving the child time to adjust to the new baby before you start if you have not already started. Because that's a big stress. Your older one, the one that you're dealing to train, might be a little bit more needy. We know that sometimes regressions happen during this time, and we wouldn't want you to be trying to put more pressure on them while you're also stressed with being with a new baby in the home as well. When changing from a crib to a bed, or if you're moving to a new house, those are big moves for babies and kids. So don't start then. Wait till you're adjusted to those new situations before you start the training. And then if your child happens to be sick, where they're especially of having diarrhea, that's not a time to start, because that's setting them up and you for some failure, because kids can't control what's happening if it's diarrhea. It's pretty uncomfortable for everyone. So suggesting not to start during those moments like this. Now, some experts say like this weather, summertime is an easy time because clothing is lighter. So that's a nice time to do it if your child is ready and you're ready to devote the time. The problem is sometimes our kids aren't ready in the summertime. So don't start now if they're not ready, and don't delay for summer if it happens to be later on, just because clothing's easier. You can make accommodations to clothing as well. So when you begin, you want to do a few things to get ready. You want to set your child up for success, number one. You want to, because you know that's going to take time on both your part and theirs, and everyone in the family who cares for your child. So be ready to devote that time to toilet training. You want to make sure you praise what they do successfully. And in the beginning, it might just be going in the bathroom and sitting on the potty, even with clothes on. And eventually it's going to be when they actually do urinate or have a BM in the potty. So you're going to be praising those successes when they happen. And if accidents happen, try not to put attention to those. Minimize that attention, because accidents are going to happen. Have that in the back of your head that it's going to happen. You're going to have things happen. Someone yesterday was saying that they were going to a store and it was almost a cleanup in aisle 3 because accident happened right in the aisle. It's going to happen. So just be ready, plan ahead. I've had one family say this, and I've had numerous people say it since then. When they were toilet training their child and they happen to have a minivan, if you have enough space in a car, they set up a little portable potty in the car and used a diaper in the reservoir with a plastic bag lining it, that they had a place to use the bathroom right there on the spot that was safe and comfortable for their child and easy to clean up, so they didn't have as many accidents that way. So that might be a strategy that would work for you, just to have something readily available if you're going to be out and about. I thought it was a brilliant idea, because I'll never forget the time my one granddaughter, when she was young, in the middle of toilet training, ready to check out at Target with a cart full of things, and she said, "Grandma, I have to go potty." So parked our cart, went to the bathroom, cleaned all things up, got ready. She never had to go. But, glad she told me. So be ready for those things. Those circumstances are going to happen. Consistency is key, like everything else with little ones, trying to be consistent as you can across all people, across situations that they are in. We'll talk a little bit about that later. And then avoiding words like that they're stinky and dirty about them. You can say their diaper is, or their stuff is stinky, but not them, because we want to preserve their self-esteem, because that's so important for our little ones to feel good about themselves, especially doing something like this that's such a big deal. You're going to look for your children's signs and signals of what they're doing, because you're going to know them very well. Most parents can read their kids when something's going to happen. Stay positive and be calm and patient, and then have a good sense of humor if you can. And I have a video later that I may not actually play, but I have a link for it that you can watch, because it kind of sums up all the process that you go through as a parent toilet training your child, and all the bells and whistles that you run through. So doing that. First thing you're going to do then is get ready to use whatever equipment you're going to use. Pick out what you decide. As a PT, I like having a child sit on something where their feet can touch the surface, whether that be a regular toilet with a ring reducer to make them safe and comfortable and stable, and their feet touching a step stool or something under their feet, and a place to hold on with their hands if they need to work on bearing down, or a child-sized potty in the bathroom that they can sit with their knees and hips at 90 degrees, feet on the floor, and be very comfortable getting up and down very easily. You know your circumstances of your bathroom best. My bathroom in my home is very small, so I have a ring reducer that we hang on the side of the toilet. It has a little storage hook that I use, and I have a step stool that I keep next to the toilet. I have a 3-year-old grandson who's doing toilet training right now. So that's what I use here. There are different ones. I have some pictures later on that you will see, but you can choose how you set that up in your home, what you're going to use for your child. They do recommend that if you have more than one level of your home that your child's going to be in through the course of the day. And if you don't have a bathroom on every level, at least have something available to them on every level. Because in the beginning process, especially when they're toilet training, you don't have a lot of extra time to get from space A to space B. And if you have to go all the way up a stairs or down a stairs to get to a bathroom, you may miss the mark. So you might want to make sure you have something set up in every level where they're going to be playing and spending time so that you have easy access to something for them to use. And then one other thing, if you have a child that has any sensory issues or characteristics of autism or maybe diagnosed with autism, you want to make sure it is recommended with kids with autism that you start on the regular adult-sized toilet. You may use a ring reducer, but because we know that transitions from one mode to a different mode is not easy for kids with autism, it's recommended they start on what they're going to finish with. So using an adult-sized toilet with something to make the seats safe and to make them comfortable is a better route to go with those kids. And I think for anybody in my process of having something comfortable and stable for them, but that is recommended for kids with autism. So then the other question is, what do you use? Do you use training pants or do you use pull-ups? Do you use cloth underwear? What do you use? And it's kind of a mixed recommendation on that. I know the book, Oh Crap, Potty Training or Toilet Training, I can't remember which way the word is on the book. They actually do like a diaper-free method for learning, which I think is really good for some kids because they can actually see when things are happening. And if you have the time and to devote to it, because the accidents do happen, we know that. But some kids really can understand the process of toilet training when they're naked. Going into clothes sometimes is a problem with that because then they forget to put them down. But that process can sometimes be easier. But if you're using paper diapers or pull-ups, just like diapers are, they don't get wet. They don't feel as soiled because of the texture that they are. So I know I recommend using something cloth at some point, transition to some underwear that they wear. Because we know the others are convenient. Here's a trick that I've learned over the years. If you're in the middle of toilet training and you're using cloth underwear or something to that effect, if you're going to be out and about and you're worried about having accidents, you can always put a pull-up over top of cloth underwear. And that way, if they do have an accident, they feel it. That's more like having their regular clothes on. They don't feel like they've backed up, gone to a diaper again. Because most experts say once you've started, don't go back. But that's an easy trick that you can use so that you don't have to worry about as big a mess in case an accident does happen when you're out in public. So that's another trick that has been used before. So you can choose what you're going to use. And I do have some pictures of different things later on to show it. I know nighttime having pull-ups or like the night versions of those makes that easier too, because we know kids aren't going to be ready to wear underwear at night right away until they're done with training during the daytime. So keep that in mind. So here's a couple versions. Gerber makes a bunch of versions. You can see, I'm gonna use my cursor here. There's a little cloth pull-up underwear that they have. These tend to have a thicker padding in the crotch area, and they have cute different fabrics for the different genders of the child. And they are designed to be tight in the leg opening and thicker in the fabric so that if they have accidents, it doesn't escape. You do need to wear something protecting over top of it if you're going to wear it out and about, so some kind of a cover. And some of them come with covers of their own, as you probably have used maybe for your diapers anyway. This is a new version. I've not had anyone use these. These I saw through Target. They actually look like regular underwear, but they have the extra fabric, not as thick as those training pants, but they're training pants as well, which I think is a nice option because they feel a little bit more like cute underwear for kids. These are called training pants too, but they look more like a pull-up to me. So the wording, it says training pants. Just another version again, this one just cotton pants, more cotton pants, more training pants. This kind actually has kind of a liner on the outside that keeps them a little bit more waterproof. So if you have a urine accident, it's not quite as messy. So there's different versions out there that you can find. So a couple of helpful hints before you get started. You might want to, if you don't already have them, get some books about potty training. There's a whole host of books that are available on the market. I have a partial list at the end of the PowerPoint that we'll go over of books for kids as well as books for parents. But having kids, I know a couple of my families I recently worked with like the Elmo book about going potty. So some kids love Elmo, so if that's the one that charges them up, use something that they like. But there's all different ones available on the market now because everyone goes potty. In fact, one of the big books is Everyone Poops. And that's true. I mean, we all do. And so kids understanding that they're going to be like everybody else when they're going through this process is really important. But it helps them understand what's going on. And it can be one of your books that you just read. Could be kept in the bathroom once they start going to the bathroom, but one of your books that you kind of go over the process with them. If you recognize a pattern for bowel movements, that's an easy starting point. Like I said, if a child has a BM every day at 9 o'clock in the morning, boy, that's a perfect time to set them on the potty. They might be successful, and then that is the beginning of your race of toilet training. And then some people say to use some kind of special reward. And it could be a sticker if that's what your child gets really charged up by. It could be a hug for some kids. It could be a high five. It might be a fist bump. It might be a candy treat if you're okay with that. What is recommended that if you use any treat like that, that you only let them have it during toilet training. That it's not something that they would have when it's not a toilet training process because they make the connection of it being part of toilet training then. So that's the one thing that is recommended if you use a food type treat. They do recommend not using a giant treat, like kids can't hang on to that information when they're starting and figuring out the process in the very beginning. Maybe late in the process if you still need to have something like that. I know there are some kids that have trouble sitting on the potty, and there have been some kids that they earn time doing, if they like TV time, if they like a video, if they like playing on an iPad, if you do that with your child, or if they earn some other thing by sitting on the potty, that's the reward that they get, because you just have to learn how to sit on the potty. That sometimes is the starting process for some kids. So then there are also some suggestions if any of your kids go to childcare, if you go into a childcare setting and children are toilet training, you almost always see a process that looks like this at a childcare center. When you get up in the morning, most of us are going to go to the bathroom pretty soon after we wake up in the morning. That's kind of a given for all of us, probably true for our little ones. So that could be a time that you can embed into a day that your child could go and sit on the potty after they've gotten up, if they're ready. Some kids like to have some food first, but that could be a place to start. Before and after naps is also a nice time frame to have them try sitting on the potty, just as a routine part of the day, because we know that we're looking for that window of dryness with a nap of 2 hours or so. And so if you go to the bathroom before and if you go to the bathroom afterwards, that's kind of targeting that 2-hour window or so. After a meal, oftentimes about 20 minutes after having some liquids, something's going to start happening in your system. So that's another time to sit on the toilet and have a moment's break to see if something will happen. Before bath time is a great time to embed into your day because you're going to be getting into the bathtub anyway. So that's another time that you can just have it be part of your routine that you follow. And then before bedtime, have it be another time that they just automatically will sit on the potty. Most kids are not going to worry about stopping play during these moments. So if you have a child that really doesn't want to go, if you embed it in as a routine, makes it easier for some of us. But I know that if kids go to childcare, that's often a system that is followed there. They go when they get to school, they go before they have a snack, or after a snack, they go before they have their nap, wake up and go again, and they do it before they go home. So it's kind of a process training our body into rhythms. If you're not sure if your child has a pattern for any bowel movements or urine, and you're worried about that, you can actually look at, there's different versions of this. I made this based on what I learned years ago in a workshop, but there's different record forms you can do. And when I used to work with the kids that were in my school program, we usually use this and it went back and forth to home. So we had a way to look at what happened at home and how we were being consistent with us at school, because we know consistency is so important. But if you're not sure about whether they have a pattern, you can actually do a log for 2 weeks. And from the time they wake up, every hour, just check them and see, are they wet? Are they dry? Have they had a bowel movement? And you note it on a chart for their wake up time to bedtime for 2 full weeks. And afterwards, and I have an example of a mock-up of one, you can look at it then and see, okay, so when are they wet? Well, this one at 12:30 is always wet. That'd be a perfect time to sit on the toilet to have a urine because it looks like it's happening almost every day. And they're dry right before that, 11:30 most days. So within that window, 11:30 to 12:30 would be a time to go sit on the potty, closer to 12:30. Looks like BMs happen most days around 9:30. So you look at this pattern and say, oh, that might be a time that I could sit them on the potty as part of our routine, and they might have a BM. One thing that I learned is if you start a system like this, sometimes when kids are starting and learning how to make the process work, this process gets more erratic before it stabilizes again. So sometimes kids who have that regular 9 o'clock BM might get a little more erratic and then come back to that 9 o'clock time once they've got it figured out. But if you're not sure, this is a way that you can kind of mark it up and take a look and see and determine, is there a pattern that you're following? Because you want to look for windows of dryness and you want to look for a pattern for BMs to see what they're doing. Okay, this is the video. I'm not sure if we have time to watch it. So I have the links at the bottom. If you need some humor, because toilet training is a big deal, I encourage you to take a look at this video because it takes you through every emotion as a parent and your child and the process that you're going through with toilet training a little one. And it's very funny. I like this guy that does it. So I encourage you to take a look at this at a later time because it's available on YouTube. Very, very, very funny, but true to every emotion that you get to with toilet training. Oh, okay. So then I kind of summarized, he said 22 steps. I kind of summarized from all the things that I saw, like 10 kind of steps that you can follow. So the first one is just to relax, be patient, try and be calm, have it be your mantra through the whole process, because I know my son was a challenge and that was really challenging for me to stay patient and calm because it was really hard for him. Show your child what to do. Let them follow you to the bathroom. Let them see what you do. See the process, see what happens once they go potty or you go potty, it goes away. Talk about you stay dry, you have dry underwear, so they can see what you're doing and you're assigning the words to what those things are. You're actually going to use the words that you're going to describe toileting, whether you're going to use wee, pee, whatever words you're going to use. And if your child goes with family members or at school, try and do the same thing in all places. So if there's certain words that are used at school, you might want to use the same ones if they're there 5 days a week. You might want to use those same words at home, so there's consistency for your child. Or if you have family members that watch them or are involved with their care, you want to make sure that you're all on the same page. So use those words and so they understand what they mean. When you say you're going to go pee-pee, that they're going to have urine come into the potty. If you're going to have a BM, if you're going to have poo-poo or caca or whatever it might be, that they know what that to expect when you talk about that. So you assign those words. And then if you see your child, watch for those signs that you see in your child that they're either having a BM or coming up to having a BM. So you know what they are, and you can actually assign to them it looks like you're going to have a poo-poo because they're doing their typical pattern that they always see. Or if they're urinating, I've had some kids that will touch the front of their diaper because they've just urinated, or they stop from playing for a moment because they know something's happening. They can't tell you yet, but they know something's happening. So watch for those signs and help them understand that something's happening with their body. Then the next one is get that whatever situation in your bathroom, set it up. Have a little freestanding potty chair, or have your reducer for the big toilet, whatever you're going to have set up. A step stool, if you can do that, was probably the best thing to do in the bathroom if you're using a regular toilet. But have that access available to them because they might want to try sitting on it when they're just in the room with you. And that would be okay. Now, one recommendation from the American Academy of Pediatrics is to remove the deflectors for all kids, but especially for little boys. So I will point out in a picture what a deflector is. So if you have a ring reducer, there's a little part that lifts up in the very front that would go between your legs. And the design of it is intended to keep urine from escaping out of the toilet. Doesn't seem to do that. I've gotten urinated on more times than I can ever share with doing this over the years. But they say take those off. And I can tell a story, a little boy that I worked with years ago, and we had a toilet chair for a bigger sized child because this boy was a little bit older. And he happened to have braces on his legs. And so he pulled his pants down. When he went to sit down, this one had a deflector that was firm. It was a hard plastic, and it scraped his legs. He didn't want to sit on it again. And that's one of the reasons not to use them, because we don't want to cause pain when kids are trying to do toilet training, because once pain happens, they're not going to want to do that thing again because it hurt. So we want to remove those if you can. And there's some tricks that we can use What I've learned over those years is take 3, 4 sheets of toilet paper, wrap it around your hand, and then have the child help you. Push that down to deflect the penis downward and leave it in place between their little legs. And that will do 2 things. It will deflect their penis downward, like a reflector would do, but it would also be a way to then dry off any escaping urine. They can push it down. Now I have to tell you, my almost 3-year-old grandson finds it fascinating to dry himself. So he'll dribble a little bit, do that, push it in, and then flush, and then wait for another dribble. So he's really fascinated with the dribble and flush. So we're working on extending out the amount of urine that he's getting out with the paper stuck between his legs, so he doesn't end up peeing outside the toilet. So, but that's why they recommend removing those if you can. Some don't remove, but they're doing better making them. So then read those potty books, have them available to you wherever you're at, in the bathroom, outside the bathroom, a variety of ones. Now they make ones that are gender specific because the process is a little bit different with boys than it is with girls eventually. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Get whatever you're going to use, whether it's going to be pull-ups, if you're going to use training pants, if you're going to use cloth pants, whatever process you're going to have, get those things available so you can do that transition as you're doing the toilet process. And with kids that are starting to have success with urinating, after they've been successful for a little short period of time, is when you want to transition to something that makes it that they have something that's more like the big boy clothes, big girl clothes. One thing to be very aware of is when you're toilet training, especially, and I find like leggings, I have 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson. Leggings are really adorable on kids and nice to wear, but when you're toilet training, they're hard to get up and down. If you have pants or clothing that has zippers or fasteners of some sort or belts, that makes it difficult. It takes time trying to get clothes off. And sometimes having clothing that's a slightly bigger size than what they normally wear, not so much that they would fall down, but something that's easy to get up and down quickly so they have more time to get into the bathroom and do their business is kind of helpful. Encourages independence more too. So just having to go up and down, because kids always have trouble pulling up the backside of their pants, especially if they're wearing a pull-up, it kind of gets stuck on the backside. So doing something that makes it easy up and down, and you have opportunities to practice that when they're dressing for the day or undressing at the end of the day, so you can practice pulling clothes up and down too. So just have that stuff ready and talk about it. I mean, some kids, they say, I want to have Paw Patrol undies. If that's what they like, get that kind. So it's a thing that might motivate your child too. And then what you're going to plan for is when you start the process, you're going to be doing a lot of the work. You're structuring it for them. You're going to give them a lot of assistance with getting on and off the toilet, managing their clothes, washing their hands afterwards, wiping. All those steps of the process, you're going to be helping them with a lot in the beginning. But over time, as they get better at the process, you're going to phase away your amount of assistance. Like I said, you might need to still help wiping bums up until 5 years old, possibly. But just you're going to phase away your assistance as time goes on. Let your child sit for just a couple minutes. They actually say no more than 5 to read that book. And because sometimes sitting too long, you lose track of what you're doing. Kids think they're just sitting there playing and they forget they're supposed to be there to do their business. So you only want to sit for a few minutes. And then when they get done, if they've been successful, you can give them their praise. If not, you say, well, we'll try again next time, because you're going to have a lot of opportunities to do it. If at some point your child can tell you they have to go, then help them get there and give them as much assistance as you need so they can have that independence too and not have an accident. Reward your child for having, whether they urinate or have a BM or if they just practice sitting, give them that reward of a hug, whatever your child likes. I've had some kids who don't like a big fuss. So if you get too excited about it, they might shut down. You know your child best, you know what charges them up the best. So use that as their reward. If they don't have success, just say, well, try next time, and be kind of matter of fact about it. Because if you put too much stress on it, you're going to cause them to shut down a little bit. We know that if we put pressure on our kids, it can create a bad cycle for them. Reminding them too often will often make them not be able to get things going. And it sometimes sets up problems with constipation as well. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. We don't want to have that happen because it's really a challenge at this point. It makes it trying to do potty training with BMs really difficult. Don't be surprised. There are times when kids are learning how to make things work. because they're just learning that control of that sphincter and how to start it and keep it going and shutting it down. There are some kids that will sit for those 5 minutes, stand up, and then all of a sudden they let loose. And you might see that happen. And that usually is because they're getting their motor going. The motor isn't quite ready by the time they stand up, and then it lets loose. So it's a positive thing if that happens. It's just that they're not quite there yet. It's a near miss. And it's not really a bad accident. It just happened. But be ready. It takes time to learn this process. Now, I did have a set of twins. One of the little girls was in the throes of toilet training, and she was getting ready to take a bath, and she suddenly had a BM on the floor, and she was afraid to go in the bathroom after that. So it was really a challenge for her mom and dad to get her used to being in the bathroom, because she had this near miss, and it happened getting into the bathtub after she had sat on the potty and nothing happened. So be aware of that, because sometimes it can be a little traumatic for your child if that happens when they're trying to use that bathroom, more than the urine. I think BMs kind of are scary. Be aware of that. When they're done using whatever they're doing in the bathroom, remember to teach the whole steps of hygiene. You're going to help them wipe. Girls always wipe front to back because you don't want to cause contamination and create urinary tract infections. So you want to do that as well for them. And then also make sure you teach them that washing and drying their hands are part of the process, because that is going to be a piece of the process you want them to always do. So do it from day one. And even if they don't do anything when they sit down, I recommend that you have them wash their hands and dry them, because that's a piece of the whole system of toilet training. It's one more step of it. So we know accidents happen. It's recommended that you teach them very casually. Stay calm and positive, because it's going to be something that happens occasionally. It might happen more in certain situations than others. And if you know that does happen for your child, like if you're out and about, it might happen more frequently. Be prepared. And try to avoid scolding them or shaming them for having it happen, because they're learning to control their bodies. And it's a lot of work for kids. It's a milestone, just like doing all those other milestones of development. So it takes time, and it takes a lot of energy on all of our parts. So be ready to support your child when this happens. Have extra clothing with you. Have them help clean up. If they need to wipe up the floor with them, that's what they can do, because they know that urine and whatever goes in the bathroom, not on the floor, and not to be in a punitive way at all, but just, it's part of the process. Now, one other thing that is either great for kids or they hate it, like my grandson loves flushing. He sits on the toilet, reaches back and does the lever, and it goes. He thinks it's amazing. And watches the water flow. Kids either love it or they are afraid of it. So you need to know your child. If your child loves it, also be sure that you talk about what does not go down in that toilet, because some kids will think it's fascinating and throw anything they want, toys, toothbrushes, whatever, and something that shouldn't be flushed. So have that conversation with your child when they get to a point of being more independent or they're exploring, because you don't want things that are not supposed to go down, number one. But if your child is afraid of the flush, what you might have to do is have a process of them getting used to the flushing. They may have to get down and step out of the room and stand in the doorway and tell you when to push the lever, and then work towards being back in that room to do it themselves. Because sometimes that noise is scary, especially if you have one of those high power flushers, or public bathrooms that tend to be the high power flushers. They're pretty noisy for some kids. If you have to, have them hold their hands over their ears, just to reduce the sound of it, because it can be kind of frightening. The other thing that some kids are afraid of is that they're going to flush away. So to help minimize that fear by talking about what goes in and that they're not going to go away. And also keep in mind that developmentally the ages that you see kids doing toilet training is when they don't have a clear understanding that their BM is not part of them going away. And so they're kind of scared of letting it go. So sometimes that's a piece of this fear with flushing. So conversations about that you put your poop in there and it goes away. If they have poop in a diaper, have them dump that in there and let it go away, so they get used to having it go down the toilet. Not the diaper itself, just the poop. So they practice that going away, and be aware of that, because it really is something that is kind of important. I always think back to talking about what not to flush. Former coworker of mine had a son, and he's grown now. Haven't seen him in many years, but he was a very curious boy. He took a roll of toilet paper and stuffed the whole thing in the toilet to flush it to see what happened. So you want to be aware of that. we don't want any of those big messes. It was quite a mess that they had to clean up because it flooded everywhere. So be wary, but it's exciting at the same time because that fascination is kind of a good thing because they're interested. So, okay, another fear is the size of the toilet. Kids need to feel secure. Number one, to be able to relax enough to let things happen or to bear down to pass a BM. So we need to make sure that they feel comfortable. And having a big toilet seat that's bigger than their little bodies makes them feel like they're going to fall in. So making it feel a safe place for them, talking about it, number one, minimizing the size if you're on a big toilet, so using a reducer so it makes the opening smaller and more comfortable for them, that they can't fall in. One of my tricks with kids is, especially boys, is you can actually have them sit facing backward towards the tank. They can't fall in because they can hold on to the tank. They have to take their pants all the way off. They can't have clothing on the bottom or on one leg only. But it also will direct their penis downwards. They don't have as big of a chance of getting things outside of the toilet, but it's a very comfortable and secure way of sitting if that's what they need. Not all kids need that, but that's one way that can work for some kids. The problem with that is it doesn't work in a public bathroom because they don't typically have tanks. So, and they're not conducive to that kind of situation. But that's one of the reasons why a ring reducer is really important, because the kids can feel like they're falling in. Some kids are afraid of the rapid movement of water. So again, talking about what that is, it's a fear that some kids have. Maybe they can watch the paper go down, that you can have them get used to doing that as well as a strategy that you might use. Signs of resistance. There are lots of kids that dig their heels in once they get started. They either don't want to do it at all, or once they might have an interest, but then they start realizing that it's more work and they decide they don't want to stop playing and they start saying no. And some can have pretty strong tantrums as well. So if you see someone screaming and crying when you're trying to take them to the bathroom, or if they intentionally stand next to the bathroom and urinate or have a BM on the floor, not because their motor's getting going, because they don't want to do it in the potty, or if they're not even worried about being messy in a diaper, or they actually, the biggest one is when they say no every time you want to try and go. That's a power struggle. You want to take away the power struggles, because power struggles can create a lot of problems. So it might be that they are not ready. It might be the approach that you're taking might be a little bit too direct. You may need to back off the way you're doing it. And sometimes giving a 2-week break, just backing off a little bit, having everything available, but not putting the pressure on your child for a week or two, sometimes is all they need, because if they really understand the process, sometimes they will all of a sudden start doing it themselves. So you don't want to have a power struggle, because that will set up a cycle of constipation for some kids. And then once a constipation situation happens, a painful BM will happen, and kids don't want to repeat a painful BM. It makes them not want to be on the potty. And it can be a cycle that we see. And I've seen more kids in the recent years that need help with having BMs, more constipation issues overall, which then sets it up to be a little more difficult when you're doing toilet training as well. So you may have to back off a little bit if you're seeing a lot of these signs, or just reframe how you're doing things. One of the tricks I've used is I use a timer when it's time to go to the bathroom, so that it's not you saying it's time, the timer says it's time to go. So you can just use the timer on your microwave or on your watch or your phone, and that's the time it says to go. So it's not you saying it's the time to go. And try not asking, are you ready to go to the bathroom? Make it be a statement. So say it's bathroom time, let's go. Time for a bathroom break, whatever word you want to use, but asking it as a question, most kids are going to say no. So they don't want to stop what they're doing. So thinking about how you say it makes a difference as well. So if they resist, they may not be ready. Back off for a little bit. Could be just that terrible twos, pause a little bit. Repiting too often puts up pressure. I already talked about the constipation. I have to tell you, there was a little 3-year-old child of a coworker who, she was stressed to get her toilet trained by fall. Preschool was starting. She was having a real struggle. She wasn't getting it. And she was voiced her frustrations to me. And she said, what am I going to do? She has to go to school in the fall. And this was summertime. And so I said, why don't you back off? She backed off for 2 weeks, and her daughter finished it all by herself. She knew exactly what process to do, but she was responding to the stress. And mom was stressed because she was trying to get her ready for fall. So backing off the pressure, her daughter knew exactly all the steps, and then she just followed through on her own. Sometimes that happens, not always, but sometimes. So think about how much stress you're putting on your child when you're doing the process, because it can make for us anxious and them as well. So if things aren't working well and your child's 4 and they're not yet toilet trained, there could be something medically wrong with your child. It's worthy of a conversation with your pediatrician, or if they're really soiling in their pants and they're even up to 5 years old, or if your child has any special needs that might need something. I had one little boy that had a fissure in his little bottom, and he had painful BMs since the time of infancy. So it was something that wasn't unique to toilet training, but it was a problem that they had to correct because he had something going on that really did impact him being toilet trained. He's 6 now and he's fine. So he got through it, and I have to say, all of your kids are going to get toilet trained. I promise they won't go to the prom and with a diaper on. What I've learned from going to workshops, even kids that have significant special needs can be trained. It just may take longer, and their timing may not be the same as what we do for a child that has no delays, but almost everyone can be toilet trained in some way. So, your kids will not go to prom in a diaper. I promise you that. It's stressful right now, but it will, once you're done with it, you'll think, "Ooh, that was so much better now." So that's where we want to get you. Okay. Some hints. I already talked about facing backward on the toilet tank. I talked about the toilet paper between the legs. Boys, they recommend sitting first, learning the process sitting first, so they can have the comfort and really know how to make it work. Once they've got that figured out, then you transition to standing to urinate, and then you work on aim. And the aim can be a square of toilet paper in the toilet that they aim to put the urine on. Could be Cheerios in the toilet. Could be whatever. There's other things that you can use for that as well. But they work on aim later. I had a dad that came to my class long ago, and he had a little boy that was only 18 months old, and he had been being very successful standing to urinate because he would imitate dad. And then one day while he was urinating, he had a BM. And then he was totally afraid to go to the bathroom because the BM fell out of his bum. And he didn't know what to do because he had not been sitting and he had not had a bowel movement while he was urinating yet. And it can happen at the same time for boys. So girls too, but especially boys. So he had to completely stop and start fresh again and do it sitting. So you don't want that to happen because it can be so traumatic. So they suggest doing it sitting first with boys. So if your child is really having trouble with having a BM, it's okay to use a diaper for that. What you might have to do is work towards using the diaper in the bathroom. So you're phasing away from that place where they hide and have it become more the place where they're going to be using the bathroom for a BM once they're out of a diaper. And because some kids, if you put the pressure on, you may have to back off and let them go ahead and do the BM in a diaper because you don't want constipation. So that's a process that you have to kind of problem solve once, if that happens to you. My son was one of those, and we ended up going to GI clinic and getting stool softeners because he really did not want to go. And sometimes he would go 2 weeks and not go, and it was really painful for him. So it was, I mean, he's fine now. He doesn't do it now. He's a dad of 3. I think it gave him a different perspective with toilet training when his kids were toilet training. So just be wary because BMs are difficult to deal with when kids withhold them. You don't want that to happen. So here are some books for parents. One, Ashton and Fox is the one that I talked about already. Vicki Lansky is one. These are some of the recommended ones from U of M. I have not seen the Toilet Learning Picture Book of Techniques. I've not looked at that one, but I've seen the rest of these. So there are a lot of things on the market. There are some recommended by specialists, some that parents like, some developmental specialists like, but there's a lot of things around. There are different methods around. OCAP potty training, that one is one a lot of my families have used. And I've read the book, and it works for a lot of kids. There are a lot of accidents that happen with that one, so be ready to clean up accidents, so that's okay. And I've had some kids, though, difficulty transitioning from being naked to wearing clothes and managing the clothes at the same time. And then stuff for kids that have specifically problems with autistic. So there's different things that are available out there based on what your child's needs are. Sensory issues can be a challenge with toilet training too, that you might need to work on some sensory things. It might be difficult for your child to sit on that high toilet versus the small toilet if they're afraid of being off the ground. So keep those things in consideration too, because you don't want to have your child be uncomfortable. I love Dr. Brazelton. This is the book that he wrote. He has a whole series of books. They're called Touch Points. And he was an amazing, he passed away shy of his 100th birthday 2 years ago, and he was an amazing pediatrician that had a lot of great information for families with little ones. So that's one of the methods that is really recommended by a lot of people. Potty Journey is a great method. It's a great one that's very structured. It kind of talks about autism, but also with kids with other delays. I actually went to her training workshop years ago with Judy Kokovanas. She was a psychiatric nurse at U of M, and she actually worked with families directly. And I'm not sure she's still practicing, but it's a very well organized method that she used, and that diaper record came from her as part of her system that she did. So it was really kind of a nice process, and it's funny too. Okay, I have to have some humor in this because it's a big deal for all of us. So I like her way she wrote the book. Some other ones for kids, like Once Upon a Potty is one. Everyone Poops is one that a lot of kids see. All by Myself. I have books that were from Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Books about that. There's ones that are I've a set that I bought for my grandkids. One that's a boy book and one's a girl book, just because that talks differently about in the boy one about standing up eventually. So some of those things are nice for them to see. Lots of different things available on the market. There's no good book, no bad book. There are some that have videos, and if you're okay with videos, that's okay too, as long as they're seen with you. I know there's recommendations about watching videos for little ones, but as long as it's interactive and that you can make it very interactive, seeing one of those about toilet training too. So, and then some other ones, Where's the Poop? Sesame Street books, if you are kids like into Sesame Street, or the one with Elmo, those are all good ones to read. So just a lot of things available, but these are ones that have been recommended from U of M. I'm going to show you a few pictures. I'll go through these quickly. There are lots of potty chairs out there. Some kids need the bells and whistles, some don't. This one tinkles, it makes noise, sounds like it's flushing. If that's what works for you, that's great. Has a storage spot on the top that you can keep either wipes or books or whatever, kind of like their own little self bathroom spot. I like this Baby Bjorn one. A lot of people have used it because the reservoir comes out. I'm going to show you with my cursor right here in that white area, this in that bowl that comes out, this is the deflector. This one is a plastic integrated one, but it's rounded. It's not as big an issue on this one because it has a softed edge. It's more to keep your legs apart than it is to deflect urine, but it's built in. It's also the handle that you can pick it up to remove and empty. That little boy I told you that trained himself around too, this is the kind he had, and he would pick it up and empty it himself into the toilet when he would urinate. And that was when mom realized he's ready to be on the big potty. So, but that one's a nice one because it gives back support, you can get arm support, and your feet touch the ground. So that's it. I like the options that are on here. It's easy for cleanup. This is a Baby Bjorn ring reducer, no handles. I wish it had handles. And again, this front piece is like a deflector built in. It's not very large. It's more to keep the legs apart than to do anything else. And it has a little handle that you can self-store it as well. This one is from IKEA. It looks very much like the Baby Bjorn. It has a removable reservoir and has a back support. So again, nice and comfortable for kids to sit on, and gives them a lot of support. I've used one like this one before, and it gives a lot of support. It's foldable, so if you have a small bathroom, you can fold it up to store it next to the toilet. It gives a little back support, has handles, and it has an adjustable footrest, so you can actually adjust it to their height when they get up and down. There's different versions of this on the market, but that's a nice one if you have a small bathroom and want to use the regular toilet. And there's pieces that come out, like that deflector piece comes off. This one is like a squatty potty, but for kids. So it's a self-contained little potty that again, that flexion can, for some kids, help them have a BM. So that's why the footrests are raised like that. And it does have an integrated little deflector here. Again, it's softer. It's not a firm, sharp edge, so it's probably not going to cause the problem that you might see with a deflector that's a hard plastic that's removable. It does have sound effects, so if your child needs that, great. If they don't like it, don't get one like this. This one is one that's convertible. It can be used as a ring reducer by itself. Again, it has handles. It's got a contoured seat. It can be used on top of the freestanding potty, and that can be the step stool. So it gives you some options with one like this. I've seen this one used in some homes that I've gone to. And then this one's another one that is it's a color for girls, but it has a removable reservoir, back support, leg support, hand rest. So again, gives a nice support for sitting. This one is another version of it. This is one that one of the families used in their car because they would put the diaper inside the little reservoir because it was a small reservoir. So easy access, pretty stable. And then one family that came to my class years ago, had this at home. They had not used it. It's for boys to learn aim. So if you really want to do that for aim for standing up, you can do this. It doesn't do much for the rest of the process of toilet training because you can't have a BM here. But if you need that for practicing standing up, you can. I have to say I had a set of twins that practiced urinating off the back deck. And then mom had to stop that practice because they went to a park and they went off to the bushes on the side to urinate because that's what they did at home. And she had to relearn the process with her boys because it was easy access when they were home in a private setting and no one could see anything because they had privacy fence. But when they went in public, they had to relearn the process. So I'm not sure a family had it. They never reported back to me on how it worked. So I have not used it. So, and this one I've seen numerous times. Again, it has bells and whistles. It chimes and makes stuff when kids sit. And if that's what you need for your child, go for it. This is one that's on the market, and I think you need to pick the whole thing up to empty it, which to me sounds like not an easy cleanup situation. And then you sit on it almost like you're sitting on a horse. So I'm not sure how comfortable that would be for a child to relax, but this is on the market. Again, I've not had anyone use this one specifically. And this is similar to the one that I have. There are some that are soft seat, has a deflector here, and there's a storage hook that you can hang on the side of your toilet so you have an easy place to keep it. Again, I would use a step stool to get up to it, whether it's a 2-step little stool or a higher step stool so their feet will touch something while they're sitting because you want them to be able to bear down and have comfort. And this is something that the original company made these that were not disposable, and they went out of business with COVID. And then another company started making these. These are disposable, and they are covers for a toilet, especially a public toilet, that you can throw away, and they reduce the size of the opening. They keep it all clean, so you don't have to worry about having a grungy, dirty bathroom that you might go into, or contamination or whatever might be there, and your little ones who all want to touch everything. And it gives them a nice, secure place to sit because it's not slippery. I have not bought these. I'm going to buy these for my grandson for when we go out in public. We haven't gotten there yet because he's just in the beginning of his toilet training process. But what a brilliant idea. And I had a young boy that was in one of my classroom programs that I was in years ago, and he was struggling with toilet training. The size of the toilet really scared him, even with a reducer. His mom found the original version of this and sent it into school, and he would go to the bathroom on the toilet because he felt secure. So it could be a game changer for you in public situations, and sometimes just the feeling of security on the toilet can make a difference for kids. I'm glad that somebody took over for the company that went out of business with doing this. Because they have some others that are foldable that you wipe down, but they don't look as secure as this. And that's cute to boot. So this little piece here in front of Dora's little deflector, this is the one that many of the ones now are made of silicone and they can come out. So if you get one of those kinds, they say take them out. The one that I have here, I've removed that. It has a silicone one that's similar to this, but I love the handles and I like that you can store it. I've used this version of the one that, like I showed a picture before, with adjustable step stool. I've never used this, but it's also one of those travel ones that you can take in public that reduces, that you can, and not disposable, it's when you take with you. So I think I like the disposable paper ones better, but that's what those are. So anyway, that's what those are. So here's the end. I'm coming to the end. So I've been talking all night. But toilet training is a big deal for not only us, but also the kids. And the secret is patience. Be patient. It takes time. You'll be amazed when your kids really get it and it clicks, because once they get it, it's amazing. So good luck on your process. I hope things go smoothly for you. Sometimes there's bumps in the road. My son had a lot of bumps, and it made me be very thoughtful for all the other families that I've worked with because of the struggles that I had with my own son, and with all the kids that I had that special needs. So good luck to you on your journey. Melanie, if you want to go ahead and stop recording.